My next guest is my marketing professor when I did my executive MBA. Before becoming a professor of 6 of the top business schools, he was marketing and sales director of Canada Dry with a sales force of 150. He is author of 46 books. Well, I'm sure he'll be 60 soon. 46 books, one of which has sold 500,000 copies. And you'll see I have that very book here. This is Malcolm McDonald's on marketing plans. So it is my great pleasure to welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Malcolm McDonald.
Well, it's very great pleasure to be here, Janice. Thank you for inviting me. And after that introduction, even I'm looking forward to hearing what I've got to say.
Malcolm, I must tell you that opposite me, I can see my bookshelf. And I pulled off one of your books, and then I pulled off another, then I pulled off another. I have a catalogue of a lot of your books. I think you are one of the only author I have almost the full collection. So I'm really excited about this. So let me ask you, first of all, we're all kind of starting to come out of a pandemic. How have you adapted to this unusual circumstance?
Well, like everybody else, the world changes suddenly. Without warning, it just changes. And all your revenue models and profit models and everything else go through the window, because if you haven't got clients and you can't go and see them and you can't converse with them in the normal way, you've got a problem. So one of the things that I did, like many other people, I formed a company called Malcolm McDonald Academy. And what I did, I captured all my knowledge, or much of my knowledge, in online workshops. And that was quite an experience in its own right, because putting stuff in online workshops, which are where you haven't got an audience, a live audience, and you can't see them, and you can't see their responses. It's a completely new world. But I captured all my knowledge, or most of it, in online workshops, and discovered loads and loads of new things in my life, different learning styles. I learned that about simplicity, about clarity, about focus, but above all, to do these things for a virtual audience, you've really got to know your stuff. And I've learned an enormous amount over the past year by adapting in that way, and I'm still doing it.
Which is that's what I love about you, is that everything you say is absolutely relevant to the time. Because you're continuing to work with lots of the major organizations that have real life problems and helping them to negotiate them. But I find it quite interesting what you say about the online presentation world, because you're used to doing, whether it's big stages or classroom workshops, all of that face-to-face live. So I'm quite intrigued that you found doing it online so uniquely different.
Well, it's, you're doing it now in a sense. You're doing exactly what I'm talking about, except that when you do a Zoom session, for example, for a company, or if it's a public Zoom session for the Chartered Institute of Marketing or the Association of Professional Sales, what you've got, you're looking at a screen, and you've probably got some slides, and however much you try and involve them in syndicates and all the rest of it, it isn't the same as actually having a physical audience and seeing the response and being able to quiz people on the spot. You've really got to learn to how to adapt to all of that. And I think I've after a year, I've probably just about managed to do that. And I must say, Janice, I don't enjoy Zoom sessions. I love audiences, I love people, love managers, love directors, love problems, love issues. And sitting in front of a screen on your own, in your office, you can't compensate for an audience. And I miss the conferences I used to attend, with up to 1,000 people, and the interaction that you had with them, and the diversity. Everything was absolutely fantastic. You can't do that in front of a screen. But I've done my best, Janice. I've done my best, I promise.
Well, I've looked at your site, which is the mmacademy.teachable.com, and it's wonderful. It looks really great. You've done a brilliant job, and I really love that. I love your titles, Malcolm, and I think there's quite a few that's like a moment with Malcolm. Which is like that creates the intimacy, which is great. I love that, having a moment with Malcolm.
Oh, well, but I tell you, I mean, it's I'm 83 now, Janice, and I'm having the time of my life. I love, as I said, I love business. In particular, I love marketing. I think marketing's the most exciting thing you can do with your clothes on. Always have done. I think it's great. But if you think about success in today's difficult world, it's hard to put your finger on it. And what I say to people about success, I say, look, if you go back in history, I defy anyone to find a chapter on Alexander the Mediocre, or Alexander, or Alfred the Mediocre. These people weren't mediocre. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody can be great, but could you just imagine, Janice, working for a company whose motto was the good thing about being mediocre is you're always at your best? What sort of a life is that? And I think what I find exciting about the new environment in which we find ourselves is that the fundamentals stay the same. It's just that we've got all sorts of new challenges that we face. But to be successful in a company, to be successful in business, to be successful as a person, you've really got to have new knowledge and new skills. And having new knowledge and new skills is hard work. It's not going to come to lazy people. You've just put your finger on it. I'm lucky to be able to work with the operating boards of some of the best companies in the world. And I still run research clubs like the Key Account Management Research Club at Cranfield, which I started 25 years ago, founded, sponsored by the likes of O3M and Siemens and Rolls-Royce, and it's still going strong. And these companies come along with real world problems that we try and solve together with them. And that is what keeps you up to date. It's what helps you to generate material for your Zoom sessions, for your classroom sessions, for your books, for your podcasts, and for everything else. And it's an exciting world. So I would say, I'm going to go on, even though I'm 83 years old, I'm going to go on learning until the day, somebody comes and carries me away. Because every day I make a point of learning half a dozen new things. So I'm looking forward to a day today and find out what I'm going to learn today. I'm probably going to learn how to do a proper podcast.
Well, let's hope. And also the Key Account Best Practice Club, that's on later on today. So I don't know if you're attending. I
am indeed. Yes,
all right.
Well,
I'll see you there. So there's a few things I want to talk to you about. One is that you've got the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And for a while, I thought, it just feels that a lot of what's coming out of the Chartered Institute of Marketing and lots of other institutions seems to be there's a big lag behind what's really happening, what's really important. I don't know what your feeling is.
Well, the question is, why would you join any kind of association? I've always been a member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing because it's our professional body. And I'm very keen on people being qualified. And I think, against what you've just said, we must remember that organizations like the Chartered Institute of Marketing, they are one of the foremost training organizations in the world, and they do prepare in a very thorough way students and managers to take on the knowledge that's necessary to become a marketer. And as you know, there are 7 levels, and each one is very professional. I've looked at them all in great detail. I'm a great supporter. I'm what you call a chartered marketer. I was the world's very first chartered marketer, and I do my continuing professional studies every year so I can continue, because I mean I just find that the world of marketing is full of too many people who don't know anything. They're not qualified. And so that's the main purpose of the Association of Professional Sales, Chartered Institute of Marketing, and to a lesser extent, organizations like the Worshipful Company of Marketers.
Yeah.
But you've got the Institute of Practitioners of Advertising, you've got direct marketing, and so on and so forth. Each one of these sort of specializations, I'm all for organizations that give people the knowledge and skills to be professional in their jobs, as opposed to just turning up and hoping that, there's too much of this in the marketing community. So I support the organizations and will continue to do so. I think they're fantastic. I think we've all got a lot to learn. Of course, we all have a lot to learn. And, if you think about it, business schools are in the same boat. There's not a lot of desperately new stuff comes out of there, because, the theory sort of comes at least a year or 2 years behind studying it and developing it into a body of knowledge and learning how it works. Then it becomes part of the mainstream theory, and that doesn't happen instantly. And of course, while that's happening, the world's moving on. So you have to keep on looking and searching and questioning, and finding a way of founding what's happening in management science, as opposed to the kind of fads that you get. 300 fads I've uncovered from the world of consultancy. And I'm not saying they're all a waste of time, but I'm a great believer in management science.
Yeah. Yeah. So I listened to the interviews on the marketing book podcast, which were brilliant. And you said, and it made me laugh. On my morning walks, I was giggling away at what you said about social media, marketers messing around with social media. That is not marketing, he was saying. So I thought, I'm going to pick him up on this one. So, Malcolm, so we have Miller Hyman Group, CSI, that give us research that says 70% of B2B buyers define their needs and 50% of them identify the solution before reaching out to sellers. They do all of this online, digital. They find thought leadership and insights through social media. That is a major channel for companies to put out their knowledge and their expertise and to solve problems. And this is how their buyers often find them and link in. So why is it that you say that social media, that all of that digital is not marketing, when a lot of sales and marketing comes from that channel?
Well, I don't really say that, to be honest, Janice. What I do is I make the point that if you do not know what your key target markets are, if you haven't segmented those markets using needs-based segmentation, if you haven't done all of that, and you haven't thought about developing differential offers for them and positioning and branding, if you don't know the basics of marketing, social media is not going to work. Social media is, at the end of the day, and incidentally, I'm studying social media at the moment as part of a CIM course, so I don't dismiss it. I mean, we're very blessed. We're absolutely blessed today with social media, with big data, with all this fantastic information that you can get about customers and consumers. What I'm saying is, that I'm not saying that's not marketing. It's like saying marketing intelligence isn't marketing. It's like saying advertising isn't marketing. It's like saying direct marketing. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that if you read what all the best commentators say, They actually say, I mean, I know, look, when I turn up to a board of directors, one of the first things I do, I say to them, and I'm talking about an operating board of directors, and I say, write down in order of importance, what are your key target markets? And don't talk to each other. And guess what they start doing? They start writing down their products. And I say, no, I didn't ask you to write your products down. I asked you to write down your key target markets. And they can't do it. And then I say, okay, whatever you've written down, now write down your sources of differential advantage. And again, I mean, how does a company make money? By selling something to somebody. You've got to know who to sell it to. You've got to know what they need. And you've got to make them an offer that makes them want to buy from you rather than from someone else. Now, social media and the whole Internet of Things is all part of that. But, you know, what's happened is people are focusing on social media without understanding why they're doing it and what the purpose is. And, you know, I find that when I do boards of directors, I always finish up by saying, look, we're blessed with this wonderful, wonderful Internet of Things. Learn it, understand about big data, understand about virtual reality, understand artificial intelligence, understand all of these things, because they're an important part of you know, the communication element of marketing. But in itself, it's not marketing. You know, it's only part of marketing. It isn't marketing. And, you know, you get the sort of cartoon that you see where you see a guy or a woman standing in front of the board of directors saying, yes, it's a pity that our profits are down by 50%. But the good news is that our Facebook likes are up 25%, and you want to stab yourself in the eye with a fork. Nobody cares about Facebook likes. The board of directors don't. There are much more important things in life than that. So it's about finding where these things fit in with this fantastic panoply of marketing. But no, I'd never say don't do it. I mean, what I do know, for example, is that in business to business, they're way behind in terms of their use of social media. I know this. I could give you, I won't bore the pants off our listeners, but I could give you at least a dozen references to prove that they're way behind. And you know, we have to help them catch up on all of this. No, I love social media. I love the Internet of Things. I think you've got to get it. You've got to understand it. You've got to get a grip of it. But if you don't understand the basics of marketing, if you don't understand the basics of your business, if you've forgotten why you exist and you live in this sort of cloud cuckoo land of social media without any real purpose, then you're not going to get very far.
Yeah.
So I do support it. I'm studying it at the moment. I love it, but I know where it fits in with marketing.
I did laugh and giggle when I heard you say that. I just want to reference your book again, you know, on marketing plans, because I want to urge the readers to read this. Particularly, I love your headings. Get rid of that big managerial nonsense is chapter 2. That's the title of chapter 2. And then don't waste money on bad marketing research. Now, where does it come from? Your no nonsense approach, Malcolm McDonald. I love it. But where does that come from? Because you often get in the academic world a lot of professors that are, you know, they're very pompous, and you know, in other worlds as well.
They've been on one of my courses. That's why they're pompous.
And the books would be like a Bible, you know, really thick. But actually, the real essence of what's in there can be quite thin for, you know, the likes of me. Whereas actually, the reason why I love your books is that they're full of great content, every page, humorous, no nonsense. Where did that come from?
Well, it comes from a deep understanding of the real world, of course. But as I said, I do insist on having everything I say founded on, you know, in management science that's proven, you know, proven in practice, proven in theory. But, you know, what you opened this bit of the conversation, you know, that particular chapter. I mean, what is the point, Janice, of doing the wrong thing well? I mean, it's stupid. It's like asking a stupid salesperson to work harder. double the chaos and increase customer annoyance. Why would you do that? You've got to get things in perspective. You've got to learn about strategy. You've got to get strategy before tactics. And there's an awful lot of people who, what I call the hairy brigade, who insist on never mind any theory. And what I do know is that when I get a board of directors, particularly of chief execs of successful small, medium enterprises, when I've had half a day or a day with them, they're new people and they write to me and say, I've changed their lives. It doesn't mean that they've not been successful. It just means that they now know what to focus on and how to use the resources for the benefit of society. And to do that, you've got to have a set of procedures. You've got to have a body of knowledge. You've got to have some kind of theoretical frameworks. If you've got no theoretical frameworks, you've got nothing to hang anything on. And I was taught, I mean, I'm not going to say where I was taught marketing, but I was taught very badly marketing. It was just a sort of collection of techniques and tools, and I didn't know where the beginning was and where the end was, and I didn't know how to start solving a problem. And I had to learn to do that myself. And I've captured all that stuff in my books, and well, not just my books, but my teaching as well. And I'm very proud of it because I know people say to me, what do you do, Malcolm? And I say, I teach people how to make money. That's what I do. And if they're already making money, I teach them how to make more money. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great life, and I'm having a fantastic time, Janice.
Brilliant, brilliant.
And incidentally, once you put one of my books down, you just can't pick it up.
No, did you see all of these notes in there? So yes, I do pick it up, and I pick them, I pick it up. Look how many notes there are in this one as well. I pick it up often. They're great references if you're in the field, because they are relevant for today and what's important. So I do agree with you there. Do you think that B2B sellers have shifted enough? We're talking about how things have moved on, the gap between buyers and sellers. But so do you think they have shifted enough, sellers shifted enough to be buyer and customer centric?
Nope. I really don't. And again, I won't bore listeners or viewers with the references and the research. But I mean, if you look at the work of companies like Marketo and Salesforce and McKinsey, you'll find that it's mostly B2B organizations. They send the same message, undifferentiated, across all the media, irrespective of the stage of the buying process, irrespective of the preferences of the different segments. And when you think about that, here we are in 2021, and organizations are still doing that. We've got massive mountains to climb in terms of getting rid of the ignorance about what real marketing is. And I'll give you another little statistic. If you look at what McKinsey say, my research supports what McKinsey say, but only 5% of organizations have got financially quantified value propositions. I mean, what on earth? I mean, what do marketers think their job is? I know it's social media, isn't it? Oh, yeah, we'll do a bit of social media. I mean, you can use social media to put together value propositions, and you touched on that earlier on. But you've got to have, to succeed today, you've got to have a really deep understanding of how the market works from end to end, who the decision makers are, how those decision makers are segmented, properly segmented, what their real communication preferences are. Then you'll make effective use of social media and the Internet of Things. But after you've done all that work, I find that, for example, I've got a colleague who is a buyer for the National Health Service. Now they actually buy hundreds of millions of pounds worth of stuff. And this buying guy, he's absolutely appalled when people turn up for a multi-million-pound project and they haven't even worked out what the payback period is and what the return on investment is. And they haven't really worked out what the real value is to the organization that's going to use it. So here we are, 2021, beginning of 2021, and you've still got less than 5% of organizations who haven't got financially quantified value propositions. I feel sorry for salespeople, because salespeople, if the marketing department haven't done that basic work, salespeople have got to work it out themselves. And the difference today, if we want to bridge that gap in terms of, really being customer centric, what we have to do, we have to have salespeople who are more like general managers, more like business managers, who've got a deep understanding of the way industry works, a deep understanding of the way companies work, a deep understanding of things like Porter's 5 forces, value chain analysis, a deep understanding of those things. And only then will you be able to relate to the real problems of the organizations you're trying to sell to. I mean, the problem is we're still in a situation where you make things and we chuck them over the fence, and the poor souls are supposed to flog them. I mean, I do know, since my day as a sales director and a salesman, I do know we've made massive strides forward, but we've still got a long way to go, particularly in the B2B space. And we've got more than enough research to show what the chasm is that has to be crossed. And no, the answer is we are not. We're not customer centric. We're a long way off being customer centric. And until we get, for example, basic things like, take customer retention. Do you know, companies don't even measure customer retention because it's not sexy. It's much sexier to measure new sales. When I do these surveys at these conferences where I use audience response systems, I say, how many report on a regular basis customer loss? And the answer is, blank faces. Even though companies like Bain and Company and Harvard Business Review and IBM, even though they say, quite rightly, that keeping customers is much more profitable and will increase your profits massively. And we don't even measure things like that. And you look at profit and loss accounts. What on earth, what sort of planet do we live on when you look at profit and loss accounts? They're about as useful as a bird of prey with a squint. You get one line for revenue and 986 lines for costs. What does the board concentrate on? They concentrate on the costs. And they don't concentrate on where that income has come from. And all those things that we teach in marketing, that we research in marketing, we've got a long, long way to go to put marketing back in the boardroom, Janice. Sorry to be so straight.
I think it's really interesting what you say about the P&L and how one line is sales. And they don't actually break that down and know where that comes from. But without those sales, you haven't got a business. It seems now you bring that up pretty crazy. It seems like madness, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, but then you see, you've got this other thing. You've got balance sheets. I mean, for goodness sake, I'm not going to stab myself in the eye with a fork whilst I'm online now. But balance sheets. I mean, what on earth do we think a balance sheet is for? If you actually look at balance sheets, they balance, which is why you call them balance sheets. But the really important stuff isn't on the balance sheet. That's intangible assets. We don't make money, we don't make sales from factories, offices, cars, lorries. You make sales from the way you relate to your customers and your markets. And those things are called intangible assets. And you look at a company like, let's take Procter & Gamble, who are no fools. They paid 31 billion pounds for Gillette, but they only got 4 billion pounds worth of tangible assets. That means think about it, 29 billion pounds they paid for something that wasn't on the balance sheet. And when Nestle bought Roundtrees, they didn't want a factory in York. They wanted the brands. They wanted relationships with customers. And, I work very hard in my life with companies to put a value on intangible assets, put a value on brands, brand equity. I mean, what is it that really matters in a company? What is it that makes money? It's the intangible assets. And I would like to see most companies having 2 profit and loss accounts, one which has got the financial stuff in it, which is required by law, but the other which explains where all that money is coming from, what the problems are, et cetera, et cetera. So we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, certainly have. I mean, I'd love to talk to you even more. We're running out of time, I'm afraid. We're going on a little bit longer because, there is a whole conversation about new companies and how that works, in that they don't own anything. All of the new fast-growing companies don't have really any assets, whether it's Uber and such like. And, we could talk forever about that. But I do want to ask you one other question before we wrap up. And this is really to help listeners going forward. What is the one tried and tested strategy you would offer our listeners to help them to scale their sales?
Very difficult question, but I've got my own very strong views on it. I would say it's focus, focus, focus. But you only focus after you've done all that hard work I was talking about understanding your markets and segmenting your market properly. But I'm a great believer in the 80-20 rule, particularly today. I mean, for example, if you're going to cut costs, which we need to today, don't do it indiscriminately. Otherwise, you end up with anorexia industrialosa, an excessive desire to be leaner and fitter, leading to emaciation and death. Cut costs in those areas of the business that destroy shareholder value, as opposed to create shareholder value. And you'll find, if you do the analysis, which when I've got a board of directors or a course, I usually start by making them focus on the 80-20 rule by listing their main products, product groups, their main markets. And guess what? They always find that 20% or thereabouts of their products for markets create about 80% of sales and hopefully profits as well. Now, you've got to check that it's the right 20%. But the point I make is that if you marmalade your effort across everything that moves, you're going to end up being mediocre. And that's what many organizations do. The best companies, they focus on the best 20% that have been properly researched, properly understood. And, I learned this lesson from my own teaching many years ago when I was running a business school with my colleagues. I learned that, I was suffering from stress, from overwork. And I thought, hang on a second, I teach this stuff. So what I did, I made a note over about a 3-month period of everything I did, all the decisions I took. When I analyzed it over a long weekend, when I analyzed it, guess what I discovered? That 20% of the decisions I was making were delivering 80% of the value to the business school. What was I doing? I was dealing with everything that came across my desk instead of focusing on what really, really matters. That's the message I would give to any organization today, particularly today at the end of, or we hope at the end of this pandemic, is focus, make sure you focus on the right part of the market, but don't spread your resources over everything that moves. And whatever you do, strategy before tactics, don't do the wrong thing well, which is the height of stupidity.
I love that, because 80-20 Pareto's law is the core of Scale Your Sales framework. It's just don't focus on everything. Let's find that 20% and let's grow that 20%, and you double your turnover, So I love that you've said that. I think that's really key to going forward, especially as we come out of the pandemic, where many companies have had to contract. Well, when they start to expand, you want to start to expand in areas where you're going to get the greatest growth. So if you focus on that 20%, that's where it is. So that's brilliant. So Malcolm, if you're on a desert island, what's the one thing you would take with you and why?
Oh, God. Well, I write books, so I certainly wouldn't take one of my own books. And the world is full of fantastic books. My first degree was English Language and Literature from Oxford University. So you can imagine I love Shakespeare, I love Chaucer, I love all those wonderful things. I love Alexander Pope and I love Byron and so on and so forth. But I think if push came to shove, I'd probably take the Bible with me because it's full of wisdom and it's a good read in parts and it would probably keep me occupied and stop me doing naughty things.
Well, that's good. I'm glad, it'll keep you occupied because, I'm sure you've got a mind that works, really fast with the amount of interest and wealth of knowledge that you have. But keeping you out of trouble on a desert island, I think, is a good thing too. So thank you, Malcolm. Thank you for being a guest on a Scale Your Sales podcast. Tell us how listeners can get hold of you. And I will put lots of links in the show notes as well, but what's your preferred?
Well, I do quite a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. And if you look me up on LinkedIn under Professor Malcolm McDonald, I would say if you want to join me on LinkedIn, because I do, at the very least, I do a monthly sort of blog, and sometimes I do summarized webinars and things like that on there, but mostly I promulgate knowledge, the latest stuff, latest thoughts, latest research, things I'm discovering, things I'm finding out about. And it's a great medium, I think, LinkedIn. So join me on LinkedIn. Excellent.
Thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast, Malcolm.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you, Janice.